show. I don't know. My internet, I'm going to go outside and punch. Well, I don't know what the hell you punch. But anyway, thank God for Bobby Carpenter saving the show. Bobby, let's get right into it. All right. First things first, the college football playoff order. We know what it is. What do you see happening moving forward this weekend?
Well, I think a lot of it's going to depend, Dan, on how that Georgia-Bama game looks. Unless Bama wins that game, or I'm talking maybe a 3-point spread, I think they're probably out. There'll be a 2-loss squad. And so that then obviously opens the door. You've got Michigan sitting there, at 2. I think Cincinnati, will potentially slide into that 3 spot. And then it's going to come down to the Big 12 championship game and how that looks. I mean, if Baylor ends up beating Oak State, does Notre Dame slide in there? Does Baylor jump Oak State? I think a lot of it, as much as we think this is predetermined, a lot of it's going to go into watching those games. We have human beings doing this. This is what we've wanted, the subjectivity. Now we all complain about the subjectivity, but there's going to be people watching these games. So I think if there's a big blowout one way or another, I think that could still shift the order of these games a little bit. But I do think, Georgia's going to get in, obviously. I'm really pulling, Dan, for a Cincinnati-Michigan matchup. To see that happen, Luke Fickell, Jim Harbaugh, I think that would be tremendous for college football. Being an Ohio State guy with Cincinnati getting in there, I think that'd be fantastic as well.
What the hell happened to Ohio State? What happened here Saturday?
Dan, you've coached, you've been a part of a lot of teams, player and coaching. Ohio State's, one of the most talented teams in the country. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But, I talked about this in Carp's Corner a little bit where, there's times when you've been sitting at the buffet so long, Dan. Now where you're at in your life, you're a buffet, a Breakers buffet type of guy. You forget what it was like maybe when you were 18, 19, 20 years old, scrapping in to eat out of a trash can, when you were a young GA, when you were a young coach, grinding your way up. And so for the last 20 years, Ohio State has dominated this rivalry, especially for the last 10. And so I think the Michigan guys, they're sitting there, they've been staring at the window so long. And Ryan Day, he talked to the team about it. It wasn't like they were unaware of what was going to happen, but there was a sense of desperation that Michigan was playing with, and that desperation elicits a lot of emotion. And especially in the game of football, it's 11 guys, it's a physical game. Emotion can sway things dramatically. It was up in Ann Arbor, and the fact that Ohio State was never really able to take control of that game and probably take the crowd out of it, I think that probably played into it a little bit. But, mostly I think it's the fact that you look at two teams, and we joke around about this, and coaches, you got to want it. You got to be prepared. I think it just came down to the fact that for the last 3, 4, 5 years, for some of these guys, they've been asked the question of, when are you going to beat Ohio State? When are you getting the Big Ten championship? We're close. We've been knocking on the door, and finally they put together a full game. They dominated it from start to finish. They were able to establish a run game. They're able to pressure Ohio State, eliminate much of their run game. And so you can put all the X's and O's all over the board with what you want, but sometimes, effort and toughness rule the day. And, it wasn't that Ohio State was unprepared or, didn't play hard, but I think Michigan just took that thing to a whole nother level, and Ohio State, tried to match it, but I don't think they could really get there.
Yeah. One of the things that I always say, if you're doing something enough, eventually you break through. Look, it's just, and they move on. Michigan moves on. It's unbelievable though, to me, 2 losses in a season is like this massive failure. You know what I mean? It's like, holy hell. All right. I guess winning like 90% of your games is just quite not good enough anymore. It's unbelievable. It really is. It's incredible.
To stick with that theme, there was people and there's conversations. That was Ryan Day's first Big Ten loss. Yes. As a head coach. And it's not like this conference was weak this year. You're looking at there's 4 teams in the top 15. It's a very good conference. It's his first regular season loss. His other losses were to Clemson. I guess Big Ten loss. He lost to Oregon, obviously, earlier this year, lost to Bama in the national championship game, and now finally loses, a regular season game to Michigan in his 3rd year, almost getting all the way through it, the last game of the season. And there were people literally, and I'm all for holding people accountable. Like, a lot of changes need to be made. Okay, there probably do need to be some changes. Ryan's looking at that, but they're like, I wouldn't be upset if Ryan Day got a head coaching job. I'm like, you're going to push this guy out the door? Let's just wait for just a second, and there's a lot of people here I think would love to have Luke Fickell come home as well. But I'm like, time out. You've got one of the best young coaches. He's recruited at a really high level. Jim Harbaugh makes the third base, triple comments about him. That's the worst thing you can do with Ryan. He is one of the most competitive guys, Dan. He's a heck of a nice dude, but don't ever confuse those rosy cheeks for weakness. Like, he is one heck of a competitor, and I'm excited to see how he gets back to work and how he tries to tool this team back up.
Bobby, I had a good friend, Jack Schramm. You may know Jack, but he's like, hey, look, you come to Ohio State, you're going to win 75% of your games. And now it's like, no. You come to Ohio State, you got to win 99 or 100%. It's like, geez, I mean, the world is nuts. All right, is there a good way for a coach to leave a college football program?
Gosh, that's really the great question, because in full disclosure, my brother, he played for BK at Cincinnati. He worked for him there, worked for him at Notre Dame. So I know Brian a little bit and know how they operate. He also worked here for Urban Meyer, who's also a very demanding coach. You see what happened with Lincoln Riley. I think the system that we've set up makes it impossible for coaches who even want to try to do the right thing. I don't know if Lincoln Riley, I think this was something that was kind of in the works with him for a couple of weeks, whether it was going to be LSU or whether it was going to be USC. There were overtures made, and I think that he was maybe looking on the horizon. And some of the people that I talked to out in Norman kind of felt like, maybe he kind of had his foot out the door the last week. We can change this season. Not that he wasn't preparing and trying to win, just it didn't seem like he was the same guy and like looking people in the eye and doing all the things the same way that he was before. And so, he gets out of there, he takes recruits with him and everything. Everybody's banging on Brian Kelly because, everyone has their phones and they got their team app now. And you communicate with guys that way. That's how they do it. All their notifications, hey, meeting at this time tomorrow, practice at this time. So he throws through, hey, we got a meeting. I'm not going to be the coach of Notre Dame anymore. Well, people get upset about that. But like, what would you want the guy to do? The other alternative is to not say anything, leave in the middle of the night, not fly back, to at least address your team, face them like a man. That these guys understand it. There's NIL, there's the transfer portal, there's all these different things. Guys understand what's going on. At least have the decency, even if it's through your team portal, before they hear about it, through Twitter and social media and news. Hey, we at least got it from our coach. It was 10 minutes before. It was on an app. You know what? It's not ideal, but at least you're kind of trying to do the right thing there. And then you fly back the next day and you have the meeting. So for me, I think that's probably the best way you could do it. And to be honest, this is something that Brian Kelly, I think, had been working on for a while. Like, I think LSU fully intended on getting Lincoln Riley. So it wasn't until he went to USC that they probably turned their vision onto Brian Kelly. And so it happened really fast. He did the best he could with it. But the fact is, with the early signing period in the transfer portal, it's only exacerbated what ADs have to do and move this so quickly now. Coaches, and we're talking about Brian Kelly leaving. Notre Dame then could be playing in the Final Four of college football. Like, now maybe they don't have a great shot at winning it, but the thought of anyone leaving when you have a chance to go win a national championship, this isn't like a meaningless bowl game. This is a chance to go win it. You may have to get lucky, but you still have that chance. And so if the ADs and the presidents wanted it changed, they'd put restrictions in place. But the reality is the people at the top love it because they get to get the coaches they want when they want them. And, they're the ones that basically drive the bus right now.
Bobby, I left after 8 days. I'm not going to go into the whole story, but I left after 8 days being the head coach of West Virginia because of a bunch of stuff. I told the president, I told the AD, it was before Twitter, it's 2002. My wife, myself, my assistant got a 20-pack of beer, went to a little motel, hid out, got up at 6 a.m. the next day, met my players, told them before anybody could, drove back to Bowling Green. A guy that now works for Fox was a writer for ESPN magazine, and he killed me for that. He killed me for manning up and going and telling my player, well, he should have just snuck out. Like, what? There's no good way, man. It's crazy. No matter what you do. If the media guy don't like you and they don't like Brian Kelly, you get killed. It's the way it is.
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and defend BK, for this. I mean, everybody knows he's getting a massive deal. But at least you have courage to go up there and stand in front of your team that you've been selling. You've had these guys commit to you to buy in. This is what we're going to do, and say, hey, you know what? There's a better opportunity for me elsewhere. It may not be fair. We may not like it, but at least you had the time to go spend the 3 to 5 minutes to get it done and to at least look people in the eye. And they may not like it. No one does. But later on, I think you look back at that and you're like, I guess the alternative was him just creeping out, not saying a word, which to me, that goes, it's counterculture to everything we're trying to teach in athletics. The man up, this and that. And I don't care, man or woman. I mean, just be a dude. A dude isn't a gender, it's a lifestyle, meaning you're accountable for what you do, the actions, your works. And so you're getting a new job. That's fine. Go talk to the people at your old job who bought in, who believed in you, and just say, hey, I'm moving on. We can all agree that, this might be better for me than it is for you right now. But you know what? At least I'm making the effort, which is better than most people do.
Yeah. And hey, by the way, I'm going to make about $10 million a year. Cause let's be honest, man. Are you Catholic?
My wife is like half Catholic. I mean, my grandfather was like, I'll be honest with you in this thing. When I got my commitment letter from Notre Dame, I got my scholarship letter. I believe Bob Davie was still the coach there. It was like a big deal. And I didn't think I was going to go there. To me, I'm like, they weren't really that great at the time. Their facilities were terrible. They're much better now. But he's like, hey, your grandpa would really like this. Like, he's from a big Catholic family, and so they had that framed. My grandfather just passed a couple of years ago, and they gave it back to me, but it was like framed, my offer letter from Notre Dame. And even when I was playing the NFL, I was playing at Ohio State. That was a huge deal to my grandfather.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a big deal.
Hey, Bobby, I grew up an hour away, Gary, Indiana. And when I went to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, my mother, the most holy of women, goes to church every day. I went every Sunday, was an altar boy. And when I didn't go to Notre Dame and I went to Indiana, the nuns dragged me into a classroom and they were pissed, but there's a saying in coaching, the collar doesn't pay. You know what I mean by that? The collar. You know what I mean? I mean, the collar doesn't pay. So LSU, hey, man, they went deep in the bayou, got a boatload of cash, the collar don't pay, baby. It's bingo night. It's chump change compared to what LSU is. All right. How does Iowa beat Michigan in the Big Ten championship game?
It's actually, a pretty good matchup for Iowa if you look at how they play football. I mean, this isn't a Michigan team. They scored 42 at Ohio State, but they didn't air it out. They pounded the rock on them. And so if you're Iowa, your pathway to victory is you have to look back early in the season, how they were able to play. They have to find a way to get Michigan some 3rd and longs, try to force some turnovers with Cade McNamara, and then they've got to get short fields to convert. Their offense isn't great by any stretch, but when you put them on a 40 or 60-yard field, they did a good job early in the season of being able to go score points. So they've got to make this game ugly. It can't get into the mid-30s. This has to be a game, Dan, where you're talking the scores are in the high teens, maybe high 20s, but ideally, you'd like something 24-17, probably in that range, with a couple of turnovers forced by Iowa that gave them some short fields that allowed them to score. Because Michigan does have a better offense. Their defense is really good. And Iowa's got to stay out of bad situations. Same as Michigan. Like, neither one of these teams want to drop back and throw the ball 40 times. So whoever has the more effective run game and who doesn't turn the ball over will ultimately win it. And I think that's the only pathway for Iowa to get it done.
Hey, Bobby, I was going to ask you a question if John Harbaugh will be a candidate for the Notre Dame job. His daughter plays lacrosse there. I'm not going to ask you that because apparently Notre Dame's got their guy. Second NFL hot take. This is by far Belichick's best coaching job in the NFL.
I don't think that that's necessarily a hot take. I think the one year where, you see Tom Brady get hurt, I think that may have been a pretty tremendous job that he did. Being able to manipulate that roster. I believe they won 11 games, didn't make the playoffs just through crazy wild card tiebreakers. But whenever you lose, what we view now as the best quarterback ever to play the game, I think that's impressive. But I think they beat the Bills this week. I think the Patriots win the AFC East. If you watch how he plays, he's got his defense back. He has an efficient offense. They can run it a little, but they've really started to air that thing out a little bit with Mac Jones, and he's looked good doing it. And they're efficient. Like, I think they ultimately get the win. And I'm with you. I agree that this is probably his best coaching job. And I don't know if he can get this team to the Super Bowl because there's a lot of other teams that are really talented. But this is a team that will win a playoff game. It wouldn't surprise me, if they're squaring off with the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game.
All right. The Dallas Cowboys and the Los Angeles Rams have been way overrated, way overvalued to this point.
You know what? I still believe in the Rams a lot. They brought in some pieces, and any coach will tell you it takes a while to kind of integrate some of that stuff. They bring in Odell Beckham Jr. It's not like he can just pick up the offense. It's much different in continuous flow sports, especially like something like basketball, but even in football, you can put some packages together for a guy, but you still have to develop a relationship in the level of cohesion with the guy that's getting you the football. So that's going to take a little bit of time for Odell Beckham Jr., who was just coming in to be an added piece. And all of a sudden he's replacing Robert Woods when he gets hurt. And then that kind of shifts the whole dynamic of what you're asking him to do. Von Miller on the defense, he's getting involved. He'll continue to improve. I'm not sitting here saying I think the Rams are the best team in the NFL, but I ultimately think I don't know if they can beat Arizona. They're going to make the playoffs. Now, whether they win a couple games, that's going to all fall on Matt Stafford's shoulders. And it's kind of the same thing in Dallas. Dallas has been beaten up massively, Dan. They've had a lot of guys out for a variety of reasons, injury, COVID, the like, whatever it is. I think they get a win this week. I think they kind of right the ship a little bit, much to the chagrin of the Rams. But I was never a huge believer in Dak, not a big believer. I just didn't think Dak Prescott could be a top 5 quarterback. And he's shown me a lot this year that I think he has what it takes to potentially get in there. And I'm really curious to see, because I think this will be a tight game, how Dallas is able to play without Mike McCarthy. Everybody, wants to give him a lot of credit for this. I'm not a huge believer in him as a game manager, as a coach. And so Dan Quinn's taken over. And I don't know if that'll be the biggest negative in the world.
All right. Taysom Hill is a legitimate NFL quarterback.
Not that I have seen yet. Maybe one day he ultimately will be. And maybe he shows us this through the remainder of the year. And they gave him the contract that gives him the ability to scale up if he does do it. But we've seen him in spurts. We've seen him in plays intermittently here. We've seen him fill in for Drew Brees when Drew was hurt at times. But now we're hopefully, if he doesn't get injured, we're going to get to see a nice sample size here when his team really needs him to win. For the Saints to make the playoffs, it's going to be because Taysom Hill plays well. I think he's probably a little bit better as a gadget guy, moving him around. He's a great athlete, can do a ton of things. I like him better in that role than I do as a quarterback. But we'll be able to see this through the second half of the year. If he can't get it done, Sean Payton's bringing somebody else in. He'll slide Taysom Hill back to his normal role, which I ultimately think is what will transpire.
And they're talking about like $96 million for the guy.
Well, so they gave him that.
Bobby.
Yeah, he's got to have it. Well, the thing is, this contract, the way that they structured it, if you play whatever the percentage was, you're a starting quarterback. Okay, you're going to be making 20 some odd million a year, which is, as much as we hate to say it, that's the going rate for quarterbacks now. But if you're not, then you're going to get paid like the guy that you were before. But I'm with you. I mean, the 96, you open your eyes big because you think, hey, if you're going to play quarterback, okay, well, you're getting compensated, at a really high level. I just don't ultimately think that they'll end up going that way in the offseason. They'll probably bring someone in to compete, and I think they'll probably slide Hill back to the role that we've seen him in the last couple of years under Brees.
All right, both of these guys have talked about wanting to be the long-term guy. So, Andy Dalton in Chicago, Jimmy G with the 49ers. Do either of them have a chance to be the long-term guy in their current city? Long-term, I'm going to say 3 to 5 years.
I would say with Andy Dalton, not a chance, just because the Bears aren't really a good team right now. And Justin Fields, when you watch, I think people can see that makes them a better team. So I think no chance for Andy Dalton being the long-term answer there in Chicago. Out in the Bay in San Francisco, it's a little bit different. Jimmy G, the problem is with him, he gives you some really good, Dan. And then all of a sudden you're like, he gives you some things that scratch your head. And he should be far enough now in his development where you don't want to see those low levels. But then all of a sudden he brings you back with a great drive and a couple of really nice wins. to me, whether he can get it done, it's going to really depend how he plays in the playoffs. If somehow they pull this thing out, and they go on this nice run here over the last 6 weeks or last seven, 8, whatever the heck, 6, 7 weeks, whatever it is, at the end of the season, and they make the playoffs and they win a couple games, and it's because of Jimmy G, not in spite of him, I think they give him another year. And the other thing too, we don't know how well Trey Lance is coming along, but I think they would ultimately give him another year. But if they're winning in spite of him, or they tank off at the end of this season, I think they'll probably end up pulling ripcord and going all in on Trey Lance for next year.
Yeah, what happens to a young guy if you decide Jimmy G is the guy? Like, what do you do with Trey Lance?
Well, and that's part of the issue. Maybe you try to trade him. Maybe the thing is he's really cheap right now, so you don't have to worry about it. Maybe you can sit there and wait for another year. I ideally would like to play him while he's on his rookie deal to take advantage of that salary cap protection. But ultimately in the NFL, it's about winning games. And it's about winning games now. We love the future and trust the process and all of these things. But it's not like San Francisco has been bad for a while and they're waiting to flip this thing over. They're good. Like they've been in playoff contention, competing for Super Bowls. I mean, people think that they're right there. So, you know what, as much as Trey Lance is you love him, but if he doesn't give you the best chance right now, you cannot afford to play him.
I agree. Like I say it all the time here in Indy. Like, I get it. Everybody likes Frank Reich. Hard Knocks is great, but you got to win the freaking games. I mean, I don't give it. The NFL is 17 games. Like, it isn't 82 games. Like, you got to, win the freaking game or shut the hell up is how I view the NFL, and that's why I love it.
Well, and that's what's unbelievable about the NFL, Dan, is the fact that, when you sit here and you look at this, it's not the 82 game or 162 game marathon. You go on a 3, even extending it to 17, you go on a 3-game skid, like you're in trouble. People are calling for your jobs. Conversely, you win 3 games. It's like the greatest thing in the world, because that's almost like that'd be the equivalent in basketball. You win 3 straight. That's like winning 17 straight in basketball. I mean, it's crazy with just how much shorter the season is. So you can't afford to have these swoons and to be able to pull out on them, because then you're leaving yourself such a small runway with limited error to be able to correct it. And injuries happen, COVID now, all this crap, everybody gets it, but you've got to find a way to manufacture wins. Like Bill Belichick wasn't apologizing last year. Heck, they were a game under 500 and he wasn't sitting here like, hey, I'm sorry, we didn't have our guys. Everybody knew it, but hey, next year you flip that thing back over, you get healthy and you move in the right direction. I don't care if it's Frank Reich. I don't care, if it's out in San Francisco, it doesn't. If it's in Dallas, Texas, it doesn't matter. The NFL, I mean, you get a couple years, and if you're not producing at a high level and you're losing those close games in years 2 and 3, you're out of there.
That's right, and that's why it's great. What do you got on Carp's Corner? What do you got?
Oh, goodness. So we talk a little bit about this coaching thing. I mean, this is wild. I want you to think about this, Dan, because you're a college coach. You've got LSU, you've got Notre Dame, you've got Oklahoma, you've got Florida, and who the heck is the other one? USC.
Yeah.
You can't tell the story of college football without all 5 of those programs. And this is the first year thing, and all of them been open. And the fact that you were poaching one coach from an elite program to another, like how rare does that happen? People talk, when the move was made, oh goodness, he just retired. North Carolina's head coach.
Mac Brown?
Who?
Mac Brown?
Not Mac, the basketball coach who just was at
Roy Williams.
Roy Williams. Roy Williams, he's out of Kansas. So he leaves one great program to go to another. But the reality was he had that relationship there. I mean, that's where he was from. So you can always understand that pull when that's the case. But like Lincoln Riley, like what's his connection out to USC? Like if you're an Oklahoma fan, you thought you were one of the 3, 4 hottest girls in school. No one would ever leave you to go somewhere else. Now, maybe they might date somebody older. You're going to the NFL, you go to the pro ranks. Like that's one thing, because that's something that you can't compete with. But I don't think you ever thought at Oklahoma you'd lose a coach to USC unless the guy had played there. Or you're at Notre Dame and you're losing a guy like Brian Kelly, who almost seems like he checks every Notre Dame box there is, to go to LSU. And so that's why I think some of these fan bases, they're a little taken back right now, because that's something, Dan, we have never seen happen, where on a large scale level, that many blue blood programs open up, and then the poaching from one school to the next, which has never occurred, because when you get to a destination job, it's called a destination job because that's the final destination of your career.
Florida's kicking themselves. They're like, well, I know Billy Napier's great, but damn, we could have Brian Kelly. We could have Lincoln Riley. What?
Hey,
you know?
people always ask, like, why would you make the phone call? I'm like, you make the phone call because if they take it, you at least know there's some level of interest. And then it might come down to a dollars and cents or family or whatever it might be. But if you can get somebody on the phone, that means they're at least intrigued. And so no one would have ever thought Lincoln Riley's going to USC. But all of a sudden, Dan, you throw out a jet, 12, 14 million a year, a $6 million house, wherever the heck it is in LA. Like, all right, you know what? You made everything good. My family, I think we can buy some happiness out here on the West Coast.
Bobby, I was ugly, skinny, and pimply, but I always called the hottest girl just for the hell of it, just to see if maybe, just maybe, she would go to prom with me, and 2 did. So there you go. Just ask. Just ask.
Well, hey,
I mean, that's all.
One of my high school coaches.
Appreciate you, brother.
No, I appreciate it. One of my high school linebacker coaches used to always say, Dan, 10 no's and a yes is a date. So you always make the ask.
Always. All they can do is say no, and hell, I was used to that. So what the hell did I care? Hey, you're the best, man. Thanks for the time. I always appreciate it. It's always a blast.
My pleasure, Dan, as always.